In a previous video, we broke down the melody question for keys that are in the major. Melodies that are in the major key. What I want to do this time is look at melodies that are written in the minor key because they're a little bit different than the major key ones. So if you looked at our previous video on minor keys and key signatures in the minor key, you'll know that this video is in the key of G minor. We know that because it's got two flats, so that means it must be in either B flat major or G minor. But we know that it's not B flat major because it's got accidentals. If it's got accidentals like this in the melody, you know that it's going to be in the minor key. This one's got an F sharp. It's got an F sharp here too. That accidental, as you can see if you look at a previous video on the key signatures in the minor key, that accidental will always be the seventh note of the minor key scale. So let's just write out our minor key scale there so we can be sure of that. So we said we were in G minor, so we're going to write out the notes of the key of G minor. That's G, A, B flat, C, D, E flat, and F. So it will be the exact same as the key of B flat major. That has got the notes B flat and E flat in there. Oops. But we start on G and we would end on G. We would go all the way up to the next G. That's the scale of G minor. But when we're writing melodies in the key of G minor, we're going to have an accidental in there. The seventh note. So that was, let's see, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The seventh note, which is F, needs to be raised. It needs to be sharpened. So we're going to turn that into F sharp. And that is now our key of G minor. Now towards the end of this video, or maybe in the middle of it if it needs to be done then, I'm going to explain why we raise that note and what the importance of it is, because there's a little bit more to it. Sometimes we have to raise another note as well. But for the moment we don't really need to talk about that, we just need to talk about the structure. So, as with melodies in the major key, bars 1 to 4, you're given those. Okay? So, when you open up your Leaving Cert melody question paper and you see what you've got in front of you, it'll be something like this. You'll have these first 4 bars given, and the notes, the melody that's written in those 4 bars, that's going to be the basis of pretty much everything you write afterwards. It's going to give you an idea of the rhythm that you need to use, the types of phrase you need to use. It tells you what key you're in, it tells you what time signature you're in, all that kind of stuff. So it's really, really important stuff. Everything that you write after that should in some way relate to those first 4 bars that you're given. It shouldn't be something completely different and off the wall. You want to show that you're able to use repetition, because that's one of the most important musical compositional devices. So let's just have a quick look at the structure. As with the major key, bars 5 and 6, let's just pick a color for those. I'll do them green. So bars 5 and 6, here and here, and also bars 13 and 14, here and here. All you have to do is develop bars 1 and 2. And you develop those by just changing these around slightly. As you can see, in both this instance and this instance, I've actually kept the exact same rhythm that they've used in bars 1 and 2. It's gone dotted crotchet quaver, crotchet crotchet, dotted crotchet quaver, crotchet crotchet, same down here. And in the second bar, it's the same again. It's crotchet, 4 quavers and a crotchet, crotchet, 4 quavers and a crotchet, crotchet, 4 quavers and a crotchet. I've kept the exact same rhythm, and in terms of the melody, I haven't changed it much. So the notes they've given me in bar 1, it goes G, B flat, D, C. I've just gone G, D, B flat, C. I've just changed the order of the notes a little bit. So I've essentially just swapped around this B flat and this D. That's all I've done there. In this one, I've done the same thing again. I've swapped around the D and the B flat, but I've started my G. I've started in a higher octave. So instead of down in this G, I started up on this high G. Also, I've changed the last note there. So they gave me C, and I use C here. In bar 13, I decided to use D. It just changed things up a little bit so that I could start on a different note at the beginning of bar 14. Okay, let's look at how I developed bar 6 and bar 14. So they gave me the notes D, F sharp, then a little passing note on a G, which leads up to an A, and F sharp and D. If you look at this, the main notes used here are D, F sharp, and A. The only note that's outside of that is this little passing note, this G note, which is on a weak beat. It's on the off beat of beat 2, so it's not really that important. The main notes are D, F sharp, and A, and if any of you are theory buffs out there, you'll know that those make up the notes of the chord D. So I've tried to use that again. On my strong beats in bar 6, I've got D, A, F sharp, and D. Again, D, F sharp, and A are the only notes I've used. The other notes I've used, G and E, they're just passing notes leading from this A going all the way down to D. So it's still using the chord of D major, which is a really important chord. It's chord 5, it's the dominant chord in this key. Down here I've changed things up a little bit. I've actually altered my melody a little more than I usually would in bar 14. The main reason I wanted to do that was because I didn't want to use chord 5. Normally, here I've used chord 5, the dominant chord. Here I've used chord 5. I deliberately didn't want to use chord 5 here because I wanted to use chord 5 in this bar so that I would set up my perfect cadence to do. So just change things up slightly here. I've actually used chord 4. I've used the chord of C minor. So it's my main notes are C, E flat, another strong beat, C, and E flat. So it just means I use chord 4, which is C minor, which is another strong chord in the key of G major. Chord 4 is always a strong chord. And that's the only reason I develop things a little bit differently there. And it's something you could do yourself if you've ever got, if they've used chord 5 in bar 2, and you then don't want to use it when you're developing that down in bar 14 because you want to use chord 5 here for your perfect cadence, you can use chord 4 here. It's something that works quite well. Okay, so that's how I develop bars 1 and 2. As you can see, and I've done it in previous videos too, I've barely changed them. I've kept the same rhythm, I've kept more or less the same notes. The only time I've really deviated from anything they've done in any major way is down here. I've changed the chord so that I wouldn't have to use chord 5 in bar 14. So the next thing we need to look at, and this one is important. When you're in the major key, as you saw and I would have seen in the major key videos, at this point you modulate to the dominant. You modulate to chord 5, so you count up on your scale chord 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and you modulate there. In your minor key, you actually don't have to modulate at all. If you're given a minor key melody to begin with, you can leave off the modulation altogether if you want. If the modulation is something you struggle with, you can just completely leave it out altogether. But having said that, I would recommend using it for 2 reasons. Number 1, it shows musicality. It shows that you're able to modulate even in the minor key, and even when you're not asked to do it, you're willing to modulate. So if you can modulate, if you get the hang of doing it, I would definitely recommend modulating rather than just not doing it, rather than leaving it out completely. The second reason that I would recommend modulating is it just gives you something to do. If you're not modulating, you're essentially just developing more bars up here, and it can just make the question a little bit boring for you, and it can put you in that situation where you're trying to find ways to make it interesting, ways other than modulating that could send you wrong. So I would recommend learning to modulate, and I'd recommend doing it for those 2 reasons. So if you are going to modulate in the minor key, you don't modulate to the dominant, you actually modulate to the relative major. And here's how you do that. So first of all, you work out what a relative major is, and there's not really much working out to do. If we're in the key of G minor, a relative major is just B flat. It's the major key of the same key signature. So 2 flats. If we have 2 flats at the beginning of a line, that means we're in B flat or G minor. In this case we're in G minor, so the other one of those, B flat, is our relative major. So it's quite easy to work out. If we were in E minor, which has 1 sharp, we just need the major key that's also 1 sharp, which would be G major. So we would modulate to G major this part, but we're not, we're in G minor, so we're going to modulate to B flat major. Okay, so this bit here, we're going to have to modulate from G minor, which we're already in, to B flat major. And here's how we do that. We're going to set it up. We're going to set up modulation in a certain way. And we're going to aim to be in the relative major by the time we get to bar 9. So we're going to aim to be in B flat, which is the relative major, by the time we get to bar 9. So we're going to have the chords, we're going to switch the key of B flat major. I'm just going to write out the notes of B flat major for the moment. So it's the exact same notes as G, except we start on B flat and end on B flat, and we don't have that F sharp. That's something that we only have in the minor key, so it's just an F natural. Okay, so this is the notes of B flat major, and we will be back to B flat then. When we're when we want to modulate to the key B flat major, we're going to use two chords from the key B flat. We're going to use this chord 2, so the second one, 1, 2, so that's a C, and we're also going to use chord 5, so 3, 4, 5. Okay, chord 5 is F. So we're going to have chord 2 in B flat major, which is the chord of C. It's actually C minor, because we've got an E flat instead of an E actual. That makes it a C minor chord. Anyone who knows their theory? And chord 5 is the other one we're going to use. We're going to use chord 5 here, which is an F. So in these bars, we want to have the chord of C minor outlined in this bar, and we want to have the chord of F outlined in this bar. So there's a way of working out the exact notes of each particular chord in the key, and it's something that I'll go into in a little bit more detail in a later video. But for the moment, we just need to know we're going to be in the key of D, sorry, using the chord of C minor here and the chord of F major here. So if you look at the notes I've got on the strong beat, we've got the notes of E flat, we've just got this little passing note of a D, it's not that important. We've got a C and an E here. Those notes, E flat, C and E, are all strong notes of the chord of C minor, so that really outlines the chord C minor there. And then we want to outline the chord of F major here. So the notes of F major are F, A and C. So if we look at that, you'll actually see we've got F, we've got C, we've got A, and then we've got F. So we've only got the notes of the chord of F major here. So we've used chord 2 and chord 5 from the relative major of B flat. Now, by the time we get to bar 9, we should be after landing perfectly in our key of B flat. For our ears listening to that, we'll hear that as really being in B flat. So I'm just going to scroll down a little bit. So now that we're now in a relative major, we're in the key of B flat, and what we want to do next is the exact same as when we looked at the major key melody questions. We're going to have a sequence here. So okay, let's use it color red here. So we're in the key of B flat, we want to have our sequence, and it is literally the exact same as the sequence in the major keys. We just have a little melody, got a B flat, F, E flat, got a lovely little run here, and back down to the B flat, and then we want to have a sequence of that, so the exact same thing, just starting on a different note, and then within that sequence, within that little melodic fragment, the notes are all the same distance apart. So when we jump from B up to F here, since we moved our first note down to A, we now have to move our second note, so B flat up to F that was. Since we moved our first note down to an A, we now have to move our next note down to an E flat, so it's jumping by the same amount. We've got our same little run down to A, and that's all the sequence is. It's the exact same idea, you just move the entire thing down one step, or the entire thing up one step, or by another distance. So we've got our sequence, that's fine. We've looked at sequences before, and we'll go into them in great depth in a later video. And then the next thing we want is our imperfect cadence. So same as in the major key, we have our imperfect cadence in bars 11 and 12. And our imperfect cadence, we're actually going back to the minor key for this, so we're no longer in B flat. By the time you get to bar 11, you're back into your original key, which was G minor. So we want to have, if you remember from our previous video, the imperfect cadence is made up of the chords 1 and 5. So chord 1 in this bar and chord 5 in this bar. And this is in the key of G minor. So we need to have chord 1, which, as you can see, 1 is G. So our chord here is going to be G minor, G with a little M for minor. And we need to have chord 5 here. So chord 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Chord 5 is D. So we're going to have a chord D here. So if you look at the notes here, we've got G, B flat, D, and we've got this little passing C, which is not that important. But those notes G, B flat, and D make up the chord G minor, make up chord 1. So that's really outlined there. Chord 5, again, if you remember, think back up to here, chord 5 is D, F sharp, and A. Let's scroll up a little bit for here. Chord 5 is D, F sharp, and A. So we need to have D, F sharp, and A on the strong beats here, and as you can see we do. We've got D, then we've got a little passing note on the offbeat, then we've got a strong F sharp, we've got another passing note, and a strong note again is A. So it's made up of D, F sharp, and A. That's our perfect cadence. Okay, so we've done that really, really well. We've gotten down to where we developed bars 1 and 2 already. And we've done everything now. We're just right up to our perfect cadence. And our perfect cadence, if you remember correctly, is just the opposite of our imperfect cadence. Instead of chord 1 to 5, you're going chord 5 to 1. And chord 5, as you might remember, is D, F sharp, and A. And as you can see, it's F sharp, A, D, F sharp. So I've only used notes of chord 5 there. And it leads up in this lovely ascending passage, which really adds a sense of climax, and leads right up to our note Do. Ends on Do, which is one of our golden rules. So that's pretty much it. Do is the home note of chord 1, so that's why it's chord 1 there. That's pretty much it. That's the breakdown of the minor key. There really isn't much difference between this and the major key. The main thing you need to look out for is that modulation. It's the only thing that's really different, and also the accidentals in the key signature. That's the main thing to watch out for. You don't have to modulate, but I would recommend it, and if you do, it modulates to the relative major by doing chord 2 of the relative major in bar 7, chord 5 of the relative major in bar 8, and then your sequence is in the relative major. And your sequence should lead back to chord 1 of your original key. Okay, I just want to give you a quick listen to that, which I always like to do so that you can hear what this melody sounds like. This. Okay, that doesn't seem to have played. Let's just try that one more time.